It was December of 1996 when my family and I made the decision and moved from beautiful, cold, and foggy South San Francisco to beautiful, not cold, not foggy Central Florida. I'll never forget it. It was a new adventure for us. It was a brand new start, so we sold or gave away everything that we could. We took everything else that we wanted to keep, we packed it up and shipped it out. And then in December, about a week and a half or so before Christmas, we packed 2 kids into the car, 1 kid in a car seat, 1 kid in a belly, not my belly, but we know that he was in there. And we packed up and we drove from here all the way over to there. It took us a few days, but we decided that we didn't really have any reason to rush, and so we didn't really hurry along. Actually, the only time constraint that we had was that we wanted to make sure to be in Florida before Christmas, because you can't spend Christmas on the road. That's not Christmas. And we had family there. My parents had just moved there. There was going to be a big Christmas celebration. And, moving to a new place is always exciting, but what I was really excited about was that it was Christmas, because I love everything about Christmas. I love Christmas music. I love Christmas movies. I love the food at Christmas. And I love the cool weather that we get at Christmas time. I love the snow. I just love all things Christmas. But as we were driving out there, one of the interesting things that I noticed was that the farther away that we got from here and the closer that we got to Florida, the hotter the temperature was. And so we finally get to Florida, we pull into the driveway, and then when I open the door, this rush of hot, humid, icky air just floods over me and into the car. And I just oh no, what kind of Christmas is this? And I look around and everything is green. It's not brown, because we all know that at Christmas time, especially here in South San Francisco, at Christmas time, everything is this beautiful, festive, joyful shade of brown. But there, everything was green, everything. And palm trees everywhere. No Christmas trees, no pine trees, palm trees everywhere. And I thought, man, nothing is as it was supposed to be. This is not what Christmas is supposed to be like. Because when I think of Christmas time, this is what I think of. Isn't that beautiful, Christmassy? But when I got to Florida, this was what I got. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a surprise, and I grew to love Christmas in Florida. But we all have expectations of what Christmas is supposed to be. And for me and for many other people, one of the things that we expect about Christmas is that Christmas happens at Christmas time. Not in March, not in August, certainly not in July, but in Christmas time, that gap of time between Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. For some of you who like to get as much of it as you can, we extend it past Christmas Day all the way up to New Year's Eve. For some of you who procrastinate, and it extends out into the middle of January, because that's when you finally get around to putting away all the Christmas stuff, I'm with you right there. But Christmas time for many people Christmas happens at Christmas time. Well, last week, one of the things that we talked about is that after Christmas is over, when we put away the ornaments and we put away the wreaths and the lights and the decorations, that one of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to put away the message of Christmas, the message that Christmas brings. And that was that Jesus came. He came, and he came to be Emmanuel, which is God with us. Not just at Christmas time, but every single minute of every single day, all throughout the year. And that we can have the peace of knowing that Emmanuel, God with us, is a reminder that God is with me, He's near me, that God works through me, and that God is for me. That God wants us to have a joyful, peaceful, abundant life. And that's the message of Christmas that shouldn't be limited to Christmas time, because Jesus isn't limited to Christmas time. And so what I want to do today for the time that we have together is I want us to look at the Christmas story, and specifically the Christmas story as told by a man named John. Now, each of the four Gospels, the four books in Scripture, the four books of the Bible that talk about and tell about the life of Jesus, each one of them was written by a different person. And each one of those writers tells the Christmas story in just a little slightly different way than the others. For example, a man named Matthew wrote the Christmas story, but he tells it from Mary, Jesus' mother's perspective. Another man named Luke, he writes it, but he writes it from Joseph, Jesus' human father, Joseph's perspective. Another man named Mark, he wrote his version, but he started his not at the birth of Jesus, but at the beginning of Jesus' public ministry. And so then we come to John. John, who starts his account of the Christmas story, not at the beginning, but before the beginning. You see, John is going to tell the story of Jesus, but he doesn't start on December 25th. He doesn't start on the day that Jesus was born. He doesn't even get to that part until he's a few paragraphs into his story. Listen to how he starts it. This is his book, the very first chapter, the very first verse, and he says this: "In the beginning, the Word already existed." So he starts talking about someone or something, I don't know, but something that he starts referring to as the capital W Word. He hasn't explained what that means yet, and to the people at that time, it had a very specific meaning. But for those of us who are reading this right now, he hasn't explained that. All he has said is that there is something, I don't know, that existed before the beginning, and he's calling that the Word. And he uses this phrase that all of the Jewish people, all of the religious people at the time would have studied and immediately recognized. He uses three words that they would have known because it's the first three words of what at the time was the Jewish scriptures. The first three words that describe the first things that happen in the world. In the beginning. And John starts off his account, his version of the Christmas story, by saying, in the beginning. You know, the beginning. The beginning. Not your beginning, not my beginning, not even the universe's beginning. Because the word beginning he's using here means before anything existed, before the very first particle of anything existed, before anything in the world had begun. He says before all of that, before anything ever was, the Word already existed. And John is saying something here. He's telling us something really, really important. And some of you need to hear this. And not just hear it, but understand this. Because for some of y'all, everything you're worried about in your life has to do with time. See, some of you, you know that God can answer your prayers. And you believe that God wants to answer your prayers. And you're pretty sure that God will answer your prayers eventually. But your question is, when, God? When? When is that prayer going to be answered? Because God, listen, my mortgage payment is due at the end of the month. My surgery is in 3 days. My wife is at home packing right now, getting ready to leave me. I know you can do something, God, but when? When are you going to do it? And John is saying this as a reminder to the people in his time and a reminder to you and me. To all of us who are worried so much about time, he's telling us, listen, you've got to know this from the very beginning. The Word isn't bound by time. Now, I want you to hold on to that for a second. We're going to continue on. He says, the Word, this thing that he hasn't described yet, he said the Word was with God and the Word was God. Now, hold on a second. How can the Word be with God and the Word be God at the same time? Now, I have to tell you, that phrase, that sentence right there is so theologically loaded. There have been countless books written about it. There are seminary classes that teach about it. There are churches that have split over that one sentence. That the Word was with God and the Word was God at the same time. And the best way, the most simplistic way, it doesn't capture everything, but I think the best way that I can hope to help you understand this is like this. Today, the day that we are broadcasting this, today is the first day of the 49ers on-field workouts for training camp. Today is the first day. Now, whatever you might think of him or whether or not he is going to be there the whole season, Jimmy G is the quarterback of the 49ers. He is a 49er. And when he gets to training camp and he walks onto that field for the first time and he stands next to his teammates, then we could say that Jimmy G was with the Niners and he was a Niner. He was both with them and he was one of them. And what John is saying here is that there is a connection between God and this entity, this being, this person, this thing that he has been referring to as the capital W Word. That somehow the Word can be both in the presence of God and be the person of God at the same time. At the same time. That this Word was God, but not all of God. That there's more to God than just the Word, but there's all of God that is in the Word. And then he says this. He says, he, referring to the Word, he existed. Okay, here's a little more information now. Because now we know that the Word is a he. Not a they, not an it, but a he. The Word is a being. The Word is a person. He says he existed in the beginning with God. He says it again, just in case you and I weren't paying attention. And then he says this. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. See, he's giving us a little more background on the Word here. And this is significant because this isn't just anyone. Right? This isn't just anyone because now God is saying that God created through him and that nothing was created except through him. In other words, this Word was not created. This Word was what did the creating. That all of the things that you and I physically see in the universe today, everything that is around us was created by the Word. Everything that is because of him. He goes on and he says that the Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. In other words, everything that you see that has life, it has life because he, the Word, gave it to them. Now, the interesting thing about this verse is this, is that when John is writing this, and he uses that word that we translate as life, he uses the Greek word zoe and not the Greek word bios. And this is significant, and let me tell you why. Both of those words are translated as life. They have very similar meanings, and they're almost interchangeable, but there is a difference. You see, bios means biological life. That's where we get the word biological, from bios. And if you have brain function and you have a heartbeat, then you have bios, you have life. But John is saying that the Word gave not bios, he says the Word gave zoe to his creation. And zoe is more than just biological life. There is a spiritual component to this type of life. The author C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, he kind of explains it like this, and I love the way that he talks about it. Listen to what he says. He says, the spiritual life which is in God from all eternity and which made the whole natural universe is zoe. Bios has, to be sure, a certain shadowy or symbolic resemblance to zoe, but only the sort of resemblance there is between a photo and a place or statue, between a photo and a place or statue and a man. The man who changed from having bios to having zoe would have gone through as big a change as a statue which changed from being a carved stone to being a real man. And that is precisely what Christianity is about. See, there's a difference, and there's a specific reason that John chose the word Zoe. Because the life that we get from the Word, the life that we get is more than just our heart beating and our brain functioning. There's a spiritual component inside it. There is something inside us that makes us different. Something in there that the Word has put in us, the Zoe, that type of life. And all of this that John is writing, all of this part of the story is simply the preamble to the Christmas story. This is the part of the beginning before the actual Christmas story that we hear at Christmas. The story that you and I, if you grew up, even if you weren't a Christian, that you heard it and you've heard it talked about, you've heard it sung about. It's the story that Linus, standing on the stage holding his blanket, tells as he recounts the story in the second book or the second chapter of Luke. It's the story that we hear every year at Christmas time. And so here's John, and he's now, as he's done the preamble, he's going to tell us his version of that same story. And this is what he says. He says, "So the Word became human and made his home among us." And that was it. That's John's version of the Christmas story. That's the whole Christmas story, according to John, that one simple verse. It's not as exciting as Matthew's. It's not as dramatic as Luke's version. But it just may be the most important telling of the Christmas story. Because what John is telling us is that this isn't just about a baby that has arrived. It isn't just about a person that has arrived. It isn't just about the Messiah that arrived. It was the Word that had arrived. It was God Himself. That God Himself became human, became flesh and blood, became just like you and me, because He knew that the only way that He could make His home among us, that He could make His home with us, is to become one of us. And John says He didn't arrive empty-handed. He brought something with Him. He says that He was full of unfailing love. Unfailing love. And faithfulness. Unfailing love. Love that doesn't fail. Love that comes through every single time. Love that is unconditional. Love that is unending. He brought that with Him. And faithfulness. That you can depend on Him, that you can count on Him, that you can put your trust in Him, and He will never let you down. He says this is what He was full of. This is what He brought with Him when He came. And then John is thinking, just in case that you think we're just making this up, just in case you think that we're giving you our best guess, just in case you think that what we're telling you is something that we've concluded from what people have told us, John says, no, we know that this is true for one reason, because we have seen it. He says, and we have seen His glory. The glory of the Father's one and only Son. We've seen it. This is not something we've made up. I've actually seen these things. You know, a few years before John wrote this, there was another man, a man named Paul. Some of you know him as the Apostle Paul or Saint Paul. Paul was kind of like the rock star of Christians, the early Christian church. Paul wrote most of what today you and I call the New Testament, but he wrote a letter, one of the letters that he wrote to the ancient churches in the ancient city of Ephesus. And Paul takes what John is saying and he wraps it up and he makes it even more personal to you and me. Because Paul says that Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, isn't just near us. He isn't just next to us. He's not just living with us, no. He says that if we allow it to happen, that Jesus doesn't just make His home among us, but Paul says that He makes His home in us. Listen to what he writes. He says, Christ will make His home in your hearts as you trust in Him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. That he makes his room, he makes his home, not just around us, not just near us, not just close by, but he makes his home here, inside us, in our hearts. Listen, many of you probably already know this, but Jesus probably wasn't born on December 25th. In fact, based on the data we have, it's likely that Jesus was born right around now, sometime in the late summer or the early fall. Now, listen, I'm not going to argue about whether or not we should celebrate Christmas on a day when it wasn't his birthday, because Christmas really isn't so much the celebration of Jesus' birthday, but it's the celebration of Jesus' arrival, the arrival of hope into a hopeless world. I remember when we were living in Florida, for a few years while we were there, my family and I actually celebrated Christmas not on December 25th. We celebrated Christmas on December 27th. You see, at the time, our family business was in senior care and senior housing, and we couldn't celebrate Christmas on Christmas because all of the family members and friends of our residents would come and celebrate Christmas with them on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day, and so we had to be there to help. So our family couldn't have any celebrations on Christmas because we were all working. Well, it turns out that the day after Christmas is the second biggest shopping day of the year. Did you know that? It is. It's also the biggest return day of the year. And so December 26th is the day with all of the biggest sales, where everything is on clearance, where the lines are long and your patience is short, but the deals are everywhere. And so for a few years, we knew that we couldn't celebrate on Christmas, so we just made the decision that our family was going to celebrate Christmas on December 27th. It just made sense. It was the day, the soonest day after Christmas, that all of our family could be together. And the money that we saved, because we did all of our Christmas shopping on December 26th when everything was on sale. You see, for my family in those few years, Christmas didn't come on December 25th. Christmas came when we started to celebrate. Christmas came when the whole family was able to get together. Christmas came when we were able to eat our Christmas food and exchange our Christmas gifts and eat our Christmas food and play Christmas games and eat our Christmas food. That was Christmas. When all of the family arrived, that was our Christmas. You see, because Christmas is not the celebration of December 25. Christmas is the celebration of the arrival of Jesus, and whenever Jesus arrives, that's Christmas. And what Paul is saying, and what countless numbers of Jesus followers who've experienced this, what we can all tell you is that when you make your decision here to put your faith and trust in Jesus, when you make that decision here, he comes to live in here. He makes his home in here. See, Paul says Christ will make his home, his dwelling place. He'll make his home in your hearts. See, we celebrate that because when Jesus arrives in your heart, when he makes that 18-inch journey from your brain to your heart, when he arrives there, that's Christmas. When Jesus comes and makes his home in you, in your life, that's your Christmas. That's your own personal Christmas. And for some of you, that very first Christmas in your heart happened a long time ago. And what I want to say to you is don't forget that. Don't put that Christmas away. Don't put it away thinking it's already done, it's over, and if I need it again, it'll be there. Don't. Celebrate it every day. And don't just keep it to yourself. You have to spread that Christmas cheer. What did Buddy the Elf say? The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. Some of you shouldn't be singing loud, but you should be telling everybody all about it. You should be sharing your Christmas joy. You should be telling people how Jesus came and is living in you. Celebrate it with your friends and your family, with your classmates and your co-workers. This is too good to not invite everyone you know to come and celebrate. But for some of you, you haven't experienced Christmas yet. You haven't experienced this type of Christmas yet. And see, I know that you can see the signs. You can see people celebrating around you. You can almost hear the music. And you know that it is time for you to start your celebration. It's time for you to make that decision. It's time for you to let go, to finally put away all of that anxiety and that frustration and that worry from having to be in control of every part of your life and say, no, Jesus, I want to invite you in. I want you to make your home in here. For some of you, you know this is the time for Jesus to arrive in your heart, because listen, whenever Jesus arrives in your heart, that's your Christmas. That's your Christmas. And when he does, he brings gifts. He brings his unfailing love, his love that will never let you down, and he brings his faithfulness, that you can trust him with every area of your life. Can you imagine what that would look like in your life if you no longer had to worry about anything because you had the faith and trust of knowing that Jesus made his home in you and that his love is unfailing, that he'll always be there, that he will accept you as you are, he will love you as you are, and that he will be faithful to you? How would you live your life differently if you didn't have to walk around worrying about everything? That you could be free of that, knowing that Jesus is with you, that Jesus is in you. Imagine what that would look like in the life of your spouse, of your husband or your wife. Imagine what that would look like in the life of your child. If your child could grow up with the freedom of knowing that they could try anything, that they could do anything, that they could be free to be who they are because Jesus was living in them. Imagine what our cities would look like if more and more people decided to let Jesus make their hearts his home. We celebrate Christmas in July because it's a great break in the middle of the year. And here at Gracepoint, we celebrate Christmas in July because this is the time that we celebrate our church anniversary every year, and we want to throw a party, and there's no better party in the world than a Christmas party. But we also know that Christmas happens every day in somebody's heart. And if you're a follower of Jesus, then I just want to encourage you today. I want to encourage you because for some of you, your personal Christmas happened years ago. You may have already forgotten about it. But don't put it away. Remember the excitement and the joy that comes with that first Christmas in your heart, your first Christmas with Jesus when he arrived there. And then get out and tell as many people you can about it. And for those of you who aren't Christians, who aren't followers of Jesus, I just want to encourage you to. That if you can almost hear the music, let yourself hear it. And take that step and invite Jesus to be not just around you and near you, but to make his home in you. If you would like to do that, if you want to make that decision to let Jesus make his home in you, I'm going to pray for you now, but would you do me a favor and would you just let me know in the comments? Or if not, you could always text or email me. You can text me at 650-260-3460 or email me at pastor@wearegracepoint.com. If you make that decision today, I'd love to have a conversation with you about it and talk about what next steps would be.
Thank you for joining us for this week's message. Gracepoint Church is located in South San Francisco, California. For additional content or to find out more information about Gracepoint Church, visit us online at wearegracepoint.com.